The twin suns of Verith Prime rose slowly, painting the endless desert in gold and silver. The wind carried hot air across the dunes, making the sand dance like liquid fire. It was a place without mercy. For centuries, no one had survived here for long. But now, in this unforgiving land, a figure lay weak and alone. Her name was Valarin, the last queen of the Thrixian dominion, once feared across the stars. She had been born in a palace made of crystal towers and glowing lights. She had been raised with servants, guards, and a voice that commanded millions. But now her crown was gone, her wings were broken, and her people had turned their backs on her. She remembered the moment it happened. The betrayal had been silent but deep. Her council had declared her unfit to rule. They said she was too soft, too willing to talk instead of fight. They wanted war. She wanted peace. And in the Thrixian world, peace was weakness. So they took her far away and left her here in the burning desert to die alone. The heat pressed on her shell like a hammer. Her breath grew shallow. Each hour felt longer than the last. Her body, once strong, now shook with every move. She dragged herself slowly, claw by claw, across the sand. But there was nowhere to go. There were no trees, no water, no shade. Only dunes, endless dunes. For the first time in her long life, Valarin felt something she had never allowed herself to feel before. Fear. She had always been surrounded by others. Thrixian queens never walked alone. They were carried, protected, obeyed. But now, there was no one. The only sound she heard was the wind and the whisper of sand shifting around her. The desert was cruel. It did not care if she was a queen or a beggar. It gave nothing. Her thoughts grew slow. Her vision blurred. She remembered the palace halls where she once spoke to entire armies. She remembered the songs sung in her honor. She remembered the warmth of power and the cold touch of betrayal. She wondered if this was how her story would end. Not in battle, not in glory, but in silence. Forgotten by everyone. But fate, as it often does, had other plans far beyond the dunes. A sand rover moved across the land. It was small and old, but strong enough to survive the heat. Its engines roared softly against the wind. Inside, a human sat at the controls. His name was Ethan Reyes, an explorer from the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. He was not a soldier or a hero. He was a cartographer, a mapmaker. He traveled across strange worlds to draw their lines, to mark their secrets, to learn their hidden paths. Verith Prime was not supposed to have life. It was listed as a dead world, but he came anyway. He liked exploring places no one cared about. Ethan was tired. His eyes were red from the sun. His lips were dry. He had been driving for hours, scanning the land, expecting nothing but sand. But suddenly his rover beeped. A soft, steady signal blinked on the screen. Lifeform detected. He frowned. There shouldn't be anyone here, he whispered. He slowed the rover and looked ahead. Through the dusty window, he saw something lying in the sand. At first, he thought it was just a rock, maybe a piece of metal. But then it moved, slowly, weakly. Ethan's heart jumped. He adjusted the rover's direction and drove closer. When he stopped a few meters away, he stepped outside. The heat slapped his face like a wall. The suns were harsh and the sand burned under his boots. But he walked carefully toward the figure. As he got closer, he saw her fully for the first time. The creature lying on the sand was unlike anything he had seen before. Her body was long and elegant, covered in smooth, dark green plates that shimmered faintly in the sunlight. 4 thin wings folded tightly against her back, dry and cracked from the heat. A crown of delicate silver ridges curved around her head like a natural crown. Her eyes, large and black like pools of oil, watched him with a mix of pride and pain. Ethan froze. He recognized her kind. Thrixians. The Terran fleet had fought with them before. The galaxy knew them as a powerful race, proud and cruel. Their queens were said to command armies and never bow. If this was truly a queen, she was not just anyone. She was one of the most important beings in the Dominion. And yet, she was dying. She tried to move away, but her limbs trembled. She let out a soft hiss. Not strong enough to be a threat. Ethan slowly raised both his hands, showing he was not armed. "It's okay," he said quietly. "I won't hurt you." She tilted her head slightly, confused by his soft tone. She had expected mockery or commands. Instead, she heard kindness. Kindness was something she had not heard in a long. Ethan slowly opened a small metal bottle and placed it on the sand in front of her. Water, clear and cool. She stared at it, but did not move. She did not trust him. Why would she? Humans and Thrixians were enemies. She had ordered attacks on Terran fleets before. Why would a human help her now? But the thirst in her body screamed louder than her pride. After a long moment, she reached out slowly and touched the bottle. She brought it to her mouth and drank. The water felt like life itself. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the coolness flow through her. Ethan watched quietly. He could not believe what he was seeing. A Thrixian queen, sitting helpless in the sand, drinking from a bottle he had given her. He had grown up hearing stories about them. Monsters, conquerors. But this woman, she did not look like a monster. She looked like someone who had lost everything. "Can you stand?" he asked softly. She opened her eyes and looked at him. His words were simple. His voice was calm. She did not understand every Terran word, but she understood enough. She tried to rise, but her legs gave way. She fell back with a dull thud. Ethan stepped forward slowly. She hissed again, weakly, but he did not stop. He offered his hand. His hand was small compared to her elegant claw. She stared at it for a long time. No one had ever offered her a hand like that. People bowed to her, or feared her, or plotted against her. No one simply offered help. Finally, with a trembling motion, she reached out. His hand wrapped around hers. Warm. Real. He helped her to her feet, tore as close to standing as her weakened state would allow. She leaned against him, her wings dragging behind. The desert wind picked up. A low, deep rumble filled the air. Ethan turned his head. A sandstorm was forming in the distance. The wall of dust grew taller and darker with each second. If they stayed here, they would be buried alive. He looked at her, then at the storm. There was no time to think. He guided her toward the rover. She resisted at first, her pride still whispering in her mind. But the storm roared louder. She let him lead her. Inside the rover, the air was cooler. Ethan lowered her gently onto the seat and strapped her in. She had never been inside a human machine before. The smell of metal and oil was strange to her. The hum of the engine was steady. She watched him as he rushed to the driver's seat. "Hang on," he said, not sure if she understood. The rover sped through the sand as the storm chased them. The sky darkened as the wall of dust moved closer. The wind screamed. Sand hit the windows like 1,000 tiny fists. Valérine stared out the window, watching the desert disappear behind a curtain of dust. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the engine and the storm. Inside the rover, it was almost peaceful. Ethan glanced at her. She sat quietly, her head lowered slightly, her breathing uneven. But her eyes, those deep black eyes, watched everything. She was a queen. Even here, weak and broken, she held herself with quiet dignity. He cleared his throat. "You're lucky I was out here," he said softly. She turned to look at him. She did not understand every word, but she understood the feeling behind it. He was not mocking her. He was trying to talk to her. She had never heard a human talk without hate. She tried to speak. Her voice came out dry and soft. "Why help?" Ethan blinked. Her accent was heavy, her words slow but clear enough. He thought for a second. "Because you're alive," he said simply. "And nobody deserves to die alone." She stared at him. No one had ever said that to her. In her world, mercy was weakness. Compassion was rare. And yet here was a human, her enemy, offering it freely. The rover drove for hours. The storm raged outside, but inside, time slowed down. Ethan gave her more water and wrapped a thermal blanket around her wings. She watched him carefully, still unsure why he was doing this. But a small part of her heart, the part she thought was long dead, felt something she did not recognize at first. Hope, as the storm finally began to fade. Ethan steered the rover toward a small rocky outcrop. It was a safe place to rest. He turned off the engine and leaned back, exhausted. The silence after the storm was almost shocking. Valérine shifted slightly. She was still weak, but she could feel a little strength returning. She looked at him again. This human was not like the ones she had seen in battles. He had no weapons, no hate in his eyes. Just tired kindness. She wondered if he knew who she really was. She wondered what he would do if he found out. She was not just any Thrixian. She was their queen. The same queen who once signed orders to attack Terran ships, and now she was sitting in a Terran rover. Saved by a human she should have called an enemy. "Ethan," he said suddenly, tapping his chest. "My name?" She tilted her head. "E." Then she repeated slowly, her voice rough but clear. He smiled faintly. It was a warm, human smile. "Yeah, that's it." She hesitated. She had many names, long names that carried the weight of her people. But in that moment, she gave him the simplest one. "Vol." Ethan nodded softly. "Nice to meet you, Vol." For a queen who had been abandoned by everyone, those words felt strange. Nice to meet you. No one had ever spoken to her like she was just a person. She had been a symbol her whole life. Now, for the first time, she felt. Seen out outside, the suns were setting, painting the desert in deep red and gold. Inside, two very different beings sat quietly, breathing the same air. They were enemies by history. But the desert did not care about history. It cared only about survival. And for now, they had each other. The night on Prime was quiet. The desert, which had burned so fiercely under the twin suns, now lay still and cold. The sky above was endless and full of stars, shining like tiny diamonds scattered across a black ocean. Ethan Reyes sat on a small metal crate outside his rover, wrapped in a light jacket. His breath came out in small clouds in the cool air. Inside the rover, Vol rested. The Thrixian queen, once powerful and proud, was now wrapped in a thermal blanket. Her breathing was slow but steady. She was weak, but the worst was behind her. For the first time in days, she could close her eyes without fear of dying alone in the sand. Ethan looked at the stars and let out a long breath. What a mess, he whispered to himself. He had not planned this. He had come here to map the desert, maybe find some old mineral ruins. He had not expected to find a alien queen. At that half-dead in the sand, he thought about what would happen if the Terran fleet found out. They'd take her, study her, maybe worse. He didn't like thinking about it. She wasn't just some creature now. She was Vol. She had a name. A voice. And though she was strange and different, she wasn't a monster. Inside the rover, Vol opened her eyes slowly. The ceiling above her was low and gray. The air smelled of oil and metal. It was not her palace, not the warm glow of Thrixian crystal halls, but it was safe. She felt something she had not felt in a long time, comfort. She turned her head and saw Ethan through the small window. He was sitting alone, his face calm but thoughtful. She studied him silently. His skin was soft compared to hers. His body was small, fragile even, but there was something in the way he sat. There's something steady. Something strong. She did not know humans well. The stories she had heard in her court were always the same. Humans are dangerous. Humans are greedy. Humans cannot be trusted. But the man outside did not look like a monster. He looked human. Just human. Vol shifted slightly, gathering her strength. Her body ached, but she was no longer at the edge of death. Slowly, she pushed the blanket away and sat up. Her wings brushed lightly against the wall. She still felt weak, but she wanted to step outside. She wanted to feel the night air. Ethan heard the soft creak of the door. He turned around quickly. There she was, while standing in the doorway of the rover. Her tall figure looked even more graceful under the starlight. Her silver crown ridges caught the moonlight and shone faintly. "Hey," Ethan said softly. He didn't move toward her. He didn't want to scare her. Vol stepped down carefully. Her feet touched the cold sand. It felt strange after the burning heat of the day. She wrapped the blanket tighter around her shoulders and looked up at the sky. "It's beautiful," Ethan said. Following her gaze, Vol tilted her head. She did not understand the exact word, but she understood his tone. The stars were beautiful. She had grown up under different skies. Stars were stars everywhere. For a long moment, they stood in silence, just breathing. The desert was quiet. The wind was soft. Two beings from different worlds shared the same sky. Ethan finally spoke. "Tomorrow," he said slowly, pointing at the horizon, "I'll head north. There's a research base about 200 kilometers from here. If I can reach it, we'll have food, water, shelter." She looked at him, her black eyes calm but unreadable. "You help me," he nodded. "Yes, I help you." She frowned slightly. "Why?" He smiled faintly. "Because you're alive, and I couldn't just leave you." She looked at him a long time. In her world, nothing was ever done without reason. People helped because they wanted power, or because they were afraid, or because they wanted something in return. But this human had nothing to gain from her. She had no army now, no crown, nothing. Yet he still helped. "Strange," she whispered. Ethan chuckled softly. "Yeah, I get that a lot." She tilted her head again, confused by his light laugh. It was a sound she rarely heard. Thrixians did not laugh like humans. Their voices were serious, sharp. But this sound, it was warm. They spent the rest of the night in quiet. Ethan gave her a small lamp to keep the cold away. She sat near him, both of them wrapped in their own blankets. They didn't speak much, but they didn't need to. The silence was soft, not heavy like the one she felt in the desert when she was alone. The next morning, the suns rose again, lighting the desert in gold. Ethan prepared the rover. He checked the engine, packed his equipment, and filled the water filters. Vol watched him silently. Her strength had grown a little overnight. She could move more easily now. "Ready?" Ethan asked, looking at her. She nodded slowly. "Yes." He smiled. "Good, let's get out of here." They climbed into the rover. As the engine started with a low hum, Vol watched the desert through the window. It stretched out endlessly before them, like a golden ocean. She had hated this place when she was abandoned here, but now it didn't seem as cold. The difference was simple. She was not alone anymore. Hours passed as the rover moved across the dunes. The wind blew gently outside. Inside, they began to talk more. At first, just simple words. Ethan taught her small Terran words: sky, sun, water, friend. She repeated them slowly, carefully. Her accent was heavy, but her voice grew clearer with each word. She also shared Thrixian words. Ethan struggled to say them correctly, which made her laugh softly, a sound she had not made in years. It surprised both of them. Ethan looked at her in shock when he heard it, and she covered her mouth slightly. Not used to such a sound from herself. Their bond grew in quiet steps. Like seeds growing under warm soil, by midday, the heat grew stronger. Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead. The water filters worked, but the desert was endless. Vol noticed his tired movements. She leaned closer, looking at the map screen. "How far?" she asked slowly. "About 1 more day," he answered. "If the rover doesn't break?" She nodded, understanding enough. Suddenly, a soft beep came from the communication panel. Ethan froze. "Oh no," he whispered. He pressed a button. A signal blinked on the screen. It was a Thrixian patrol beacon. A ship was flying not far away. He turned to Vol. She stiffened. The color in her dark eyes changed, reflecting sharp worry. She knew what it meant. The patrol was searching the desert. For her, "They'll find us," she said quietly. Ethan bit his lip. "Yeah, probably." For a moment, the silence in the rover grew heavy. She was their queen once. If they found her now, weak and in a Terran vehicle, things could become complicated. Not violent, maybe, but dangerous. they would take her back. Or worse, silence her existence forever. A fallen queen was a problem. Vol looked at him. Leave me. You run. Ethan turned sharply to her. No, she blinked. Why? He took a deep breath. Because I don't leave people behind. She stared at him. His words were simple, but the way he said them made her chest tighten in a strange way. She had been abandoned by her own people, but this human refused to leave her. You are strange, she said softly. He laughed lightly. Yeah, I know. By sunset, the patrol signal grew stronger. Ethan guided the rover toward a canyon, hoping to use it as cover. The rocks rose high around them, blocking the open sky. It was quiet here, almost too quiet. Vol touched the wall of the canyon with her clawed hand. The stone was cool under her fingers. Your people, Ethan said slowly. What will they do if they find you? She lowered her eyes. They will. Not want me. Ethan frowned. Why? Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. I wanted peace. They want war. He understood. She wasn't just abandoned. She had been thrown away because she chose mercy. Because she chose something different. A heavy sadness filled the space between them. They are wrong, Ethan said firmly. She looked at him, surprised. No one had ever told her that. In her world, a queen was never told she was right when she fell. She was only forgotten. Night came again. They camped near the canyon walls. A soft fire burned in a small container outside the rover, giving off gentle warmth. Vol sat close to it, feeling the flicker of heat against her shell. Ethan sat next to her, holding a mug of warm liquid. They'll find us tomorrow, she said quietly. Maybe, Ethan answered, but I have a plan. She tilted her head. Plan? He smiled a little. Yeah, we'll make them believe we're just a rover. No queen inside. Just a human explorer. She was silent for a moment. Then, softly, you lie. For me, yeah, he said simply. Her throat tightened. No one had ever lied for her. People had lied to her, betrayed her, used her, but never protected her. She didn't know how to respond to that feeling. So she just whispered, why? He looked at the fire. Because you're more than what they think you are. For the first time since her exile, Vol felt something powerful inside her. It was not fear, not shame. It was something warm and new. She could not name it, but she held it close. The next morning, the sound of engines echoed in the sky. The Thrixian patrol ship flew low over the desert, scanning the land. Ethan and Vol sat silently inside the rover. The engines roared above them like thunder. Ethan turned off all power. The rover went dark. The patrol passed once, twice. The third time, it hovered directly overhead. Vol held her breath. She could feel the hum of Thrixian technology in her bones. She knew it well. One scan and they would know she was inside. But then, nothing happened. The ship drifted away. The canyon walls had hidden them well. The signal disappeared into the distance. Ethan exhaled slowly. They're gone. Vol leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment. Relief washed over her. She was safe not because of soldiers or power, but because of one human, who refused to leave her behind. They continued their journey. Each mile brought them closer to the research base. Vol's strength returned more each day. She learned more Terran words. Ethan learned to understand her silences. They talked about stars, about home, about what it means to be alone, and what it means to be found. On the final evening before reaching the base, they stopped near a cliff. The sky burned red and gold as the sun set. Ethan sat on a rock, and Vol stood beside him, her wings catching the light. You could go home, Ethan said softly. Once we reach the base, we can send a signal. She shook her head slowly. No home. He looked at her. She met his gaze steadily. Home is not palace, she said carefully, choosing each word. Home is where heart is. He felt something warm in his chest when she said that. She was learning his language, but she was also teaching him something bigger. For the first time in her life, Vol smiled. The next day, the research base appeared on the horizon like a small silver dot. As they approached, Ethan felt a mix of relief and sadness. He had saved her life, but he had also grown used to her presence. The quiet bond between them was something rare. When they arrived, the Terran researchers opened the gates in surprise. No one expected Ethan to bring back a Thrixian queen, but he didn't let them treat her like a prisoner. He walked beside her as an equal. "This is Vol," he said clearly. "She's with me." The researchers stared, unsure what to say. Vol stood tall, her wings folded gracefully. She was still a queen, even without her crown. But now, she was more than a title. She was a survivor. That night, as the stars filled the sky again, Vol stood on the platform outside the base. The air was cool. Ethan joined her, holding 2 cups of warm tea. He handed one to her. She took it carefully, learning to hold it like he did. They stood together in silence, watching the stars. "You saved me," she said softly. He shook his head. "No, we saved each other." For the first time, she believed those words. She had lost her throne. She had lost her people. But she had found something unexpected in the desert, a friend. And maybe, just maybe, a new beginning. The twin sons of Vareth Prime would rise again tomorrow. But Vol would know Lon.